The C-SPAN networks bring you long-form public affairs programming from the nation's capital and are a public service of your television provider. C-SPAN, created by cable. This week on Q&A, political reporter Patrick Gavin discusses the use of television over a variety of political media platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, and other internet websites.
Patrick Gavin of Politico, how would you define your job?
I'm a staff writer. I cover politics, but I don't cover politics very seriously. I do my job seriously, but I'm not covering the budget committee. I'm not covering markups. What I try to do is do stories, some of which are fun, some of them are not fun, but are sort of kind of stories off the beaten track, or doing one-on-one interviews with politicos, but usually about their lives, about more interesting, colorful stories taking place around town.
What is Politico?
Well, it is a website and paper. It was started 5 years ago. It started off with sort of a very bare-knuckles staff, but they brought on a lot of talented reporters: Jim Vandehei, John Harris from the Washington Post, Mike Allen from Time Magazine. And they've now grown into a very large news operation. We're based out of Roslyn. They have Politico, they have Politico Pro, which is a subscription site with specific verticals on transportation and defense and things like that. But their beat is very much to cover politics obsessively and comprehensively. It's a very narrow beat. We're not covering, like a lot of news organizations have to cover sports, or they have to cover gardening, but Politico is very, very straightforward, cover politics.
You came to work in this town at Brookings, which is a very old institution, but since then, the Washington Examiner, Fishbowl, Politico, they didn't even exist 10 years ago.
Brookings did, right, but the Examiner, Fishbowl didn't exist. And it's interesting to watch the evolution of the Examiner now, as it was, won't exist very soon. This summer they're going to switch to basically a totally new format. Politico has changed a lot since it began. Media Bistro and their blogs largely remained the same, but I think the future of blogs is up for debate. So just in the, I guess 7 years I've been doing it, even at the jobs I've been at, there's been a lot of transformation.
What was Fishbowl, and why did you go to work there?
So Fishbowl is owned by Media Bistro, which is out of New York, and they cover the media world. And they have specific blogs in some of the top cities, so New York, LA, and DC. And so Fishbowl LA and Fishbowl New York and Fishbowl DC cover the media fishbowl, as it were, in those cities. So essentially a bit of it is gossip, a bit of it is ascribing personalities to a lot of these media folks, and some of it just covering the news: who's laid off, who got a new job, who got a story right, who got a story wrong. But it is, and same way I guess Politico obsessively focused about politics, Fishbowl obsessively covered Washington journalism, for better or for worse.
From what you know, does Fishbowl and Media Bistro make money?
They do. I can't say I ever knew a ton about their business operations, but I believe this is while I was there, they were sold to, I want to say, Jupiter Media, if I'm not mistaken, for a lot of money. They made our founder, Laurel Toby, a lot of dough. So in that regard, I have to say they did make money. They paid fairly well for me as a salaried employee. So I think that what's interesting about Fishbowl, and you can probably say this about Politico and any niche site, is that, and you see this on television too, is that even if you don't have the largest audience, Fishbowl DC didn't have the largest audience in the world, but it was the right audience, and it was a very smart audience. You had everybody from DC bureau chiefs to heads of, to the president of CNN to lowly cub reporters. A very smart, focused set of readers. And so from an advertising standpoint, I think that's pretty good, because you know who your readers are, and they're pretty smart.
We're talking about the fact that at age 35, you look at the media a lot differently, certainly, than I do. But how do you look at it, and how would you define journalism from your perspective?
As a business, it's I guess it's safe to say it's a struggling business in the sense that, we've seen a lot of movement and a lot of layoffs and a lot of closing in bureaus. But I think what's struggling about it now is trying to figure out, I think for the most part, people kind of know what the future of journalism is. They know that, we went through this wave of everything was free, and now organizations, including Politico, are starting to explore paid subscription models or pay-per-click models. And so I think that people are realizing that the future, the news organizations can't give it away for free anymore, but the question is, so then how do you make money off of it? And so, so as a result, I think that that's what everybody's trying to figure out. And some people do it well, some people don't. Some people go into it with the best intents of trying to make it work. But I don't think anybody totally quite knows how to make a lot of money off internet journalism. But I think we're a lot better off than we were maybe 10 years ago, where everybody was giving things away for free. Nobody had the courage to charge. And now we're slowly starting to see people have the courage to charge, and where that product is worth it, people are actually starting to pay.
We've got a list here, all kinds of clips that we've put together for the purpose of talking about the use of television in the new media, or for that matter, in the old media. And we're going to start by, this is a clip from Gwen Eifel's Washington Week, but it's the webcast after the show's over. Just run it and then get you to talk about whether these things are mattering.
Hello, I'm Gwen Eiffel. Welcome to the Washington Week Webcast Extra. I'm joined tonight by Beth Reinhardt of National Journal, John Dickerson of Slate Magazine and CBS News, Nia Malika Henderson of The Washington Post, and Pete Williams of NBC News. Where to begin? Pete, let's start by talking about one of the stories we didn't get to on the broadcast, which was this $26 billion mortgage fraud settlement that the White House announced yesterday.
Whether that is a contributing factor, and I'm sure they'll look at that as they go forward and try to finally fix this problem. Senator Snowe is sticking around to answer your questions for our Web Extra. Hello, I'm Martha Raddatz, ABC News Chief Global Affairs Correspondent, and I am joined today by former Maine Senator Olympia Snowe. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. And because we believe all politics is social at this week, we're going to ask Senator Snowe some questions submitted on Facebook. The first question comes from Carolyn Howell Nugent. Are you happier since you left the Senate, and what can we, the people, do to really have our representatives pay heed to what we expect them to do while in office?
The first part was from PBS, the second part from ABC. Yeah. Why did those organizations feel the need to extend these programs to the web?
I think a couple of reasons. One, they are experimenting, I think, like everybody is, with, are we going to attract eyeballs on here? Can we possibly make some money off of it? I think for a lot of news organizations, though, it's just simply the argument for, well, why not do it is very small, meaning you and I, once this interview is over, could film a 60-second add-on, and it would essentially cost us 60 seconds of our time, maybe a little bit of money on our electricity bill. But when you already have all these things set up for these programs, I think that to tack on an extra 60 seconds or 2 minutes, it just seems to make sense, and there's no harm in it. I think from an editorial perspective, what you can occasionally find is that I think it gives a lot of news organizations a chance to do things that they aren't quite sure that they want to do on the normal broadcast. So you'll frequently see this on ABC's This Week or on Meet the Press, where they'll do a video extra, but it's usually a lot sillier than what they would do during their hour-long broadcast, meaning they'll interview Pat Leahy for the hour on Meet the Press, but then they'll interview George Clooney about his celebrity advocacy. And so it sort of not only gives them a chance to explore video, web video, but it also, I think, allows them to protect their main brand while also giving some lip service to guests or causes that they might not otherwise.
Here's the NBC News, and nothing to do with either one of these websites. And talk about what you see here.
Yeah.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on our NBC News Hangout. My name is Louis Dubois. I'm the social media editor here at NBC News, and we're lucky enough to be joined by Pete Williams from our Washington, D.C. bureau, and Kerry Sanders here in New York. Kerry, Pete, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's start out. Pete, give us the latest news this morning on the investigation, and we'll go from there.
Well, the parents of the Sarnayev suspects, the two that the FBI believes committed the bombing, spoke today in Dagestan. The father says he will come to the United States. The mother says she's not sure yet. Both of them, of course, repeat their claim that their children couldn't possibly have been involved in this.
Lou called this a hangout. What's that mean?
That, I believe, is a Google Hangout, so obviously run by Google. And it's something that using either your smartphone or just the camera that most people have on their laptops or their desktop computer, you essentially participate, and it's essentially slightly higher tech video conferencing. A lot of people have done that. I think C-SPAN's done it. I think Politico's explored it as well. Either using Google Hangout or Skype. It's essentially obviously the quality's not terribly great, but it's very cheap, it's very easy. I mean, you could be walking down the street. I mean, the nice thing about having quality that's not that great is that the expectations are a little bit lower. So you could be out on the street, essentially, as long as you have a nice cell phone connection, calling into one of these shows. And, I think that going back to what we were saying earlier, I mean, it just becomes a question of I think what news organizations are wrestling with is what exactly am I adding? What am I contributing? Am I just sort of putting more noise onto the internet, or is it something that I can actually, I mean, if you are a reporter on the scene with your cell phone calling into one of these Google Hangouts, that is incredibly added value. If you're just sort of pontificating the way that we see lots of folks in political journalism pontificate, then the question is, am I adding value, or am I just doing what everybody else is doing?
Here's a Washington Post website thing called the Mouthpiece Theater, which I gather didn't.
Now defunct, I believe.
Now defunct. Let's watch. This is a whole different take on this.
Yeah.
Congressman Dennis Kucinich would be served insanely bad elf. Congressman Henry Waxman would drink grumpy troll lager, and Senator Robert Byrd would have the old peculiar.
Of course, White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel would attend these meetings drinking either a badass ale or a permanently pissed off Pilsner.
And we won't tell you who's getting a bottle of Mad Bitch.
This could work for international summits too. Call over the British, French, Russians, Chinese, and Canadians for a round of Arrogant Brit, Frosty Frog, Russian Imperial Stout, Red Menace Big Amber, and Moose Drool.
Now, Iran's President Ahmadinejad has a brew that's practically made for him. Serious madness.
Now, these two guys are serious journalists.
Yeah.
And why do you think this didn't make it?
Well, I believe that Mr. Milbank's comment about Hillary Clinton is what sunk that operation. I think he had to apologize, and the Post did. What I think that illustrates is, a couple of things. One, what web video allows, I think, is anybody to do them. And that's good, but that can be bad in the sense that, typically when you see people on network news and people like yourself as well, they're seasoned professionals who have a clear track record of knowing how to do their job and knowing what the boundaries are. With web video, you're essentially opening up the pool to a lot more people, which is great. But on the other hand, you face the risk of somebody who may not know what those boundaries are. And you also may not have the staff power to have somebody edit that. That could have just easily gone up on the web and through no fault really of anybody. It just didn't get edited by anybody because it's web video, just slap it online. But that is part of the problem, is that web video allows a lot of journalists, many of whom are very ambitious and can be self-centered at times, and it allows them to want to be television personalities. And so, of course, with that comes great risks, as that video proved. Occasionally, you might get a success story, but for the most part, a lot of the production quality, a lot of the humor quality is not as great as perhaps they would like it to be.
How many kids do you have?
I have two.
How old?
I have a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old daughter.
So they're not quite into video yet.
No, we've been able to keep our 2-year-old away from YouTube and all those things so far.
But what are your own habits about how do you use? Do you watch any of this stuff?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty obsessive about consuming news and knowing what's going on out there. So my internet diet's pretty heavy and extensive, which I'm probably not terribly proud about. But so I watch a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it is not terribly compelling. But to a certain extent, that's I guess as a Washington observer, that's your job, is to maybe realize that a lot of this stuff isn't compelling. But you do see everybody. I think it is kind of throwing spaghetti on a wall for a lot of these news organizations and hoping that something sticks. And for the journalists, they hope that they can segue this into greater exposure for them. And
I remember 30 some years ago when we started and we asked to take our cameras into newspaper editorial meetings, they were aghast. Why would you ever want to do that? And some said absolutely not. But this is how far it's traveled, and the Wall Street Journal has always been very cooperative. But here is Wall Street Journal video with their top editor of the editorial page, Paul Gigot.
The Obama administration has suggested over the weekend that it's willing to talk directly to North Korea. So is Washington moving again down the road of appeasement? Editorial page editor Paul Gigot is staying with me now. Paul, two pieces of news out of the weekend. This kind of pseudo offer, tentative offer of direct talks, and also an offer maybe to cut back on our ballistic missile deployments.
Yeah.
What do you make of these developments?
Well, first of all, I don't much like them. I think the timing was bad. I don't think that it was a good idea.
They now have a regular half-hour program on the weekends on Fox News. What do people that have to take their time out of their normal day feel about things like this? Have you ever talked to any of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reporters don't mind it because they love the exposure and they love the TV and all that stuff. Editors, however, I don't think are always a huge fan of it because essentially, I think in most news organizations where you see them doing essentially what you just saw, these reporters aren't getting paid more for their extra time. So this is essentially one more job that they need to do in an otherwise busy day. And this is on top of, now they all have to tweet and they all have to blog and they all have to, and that's on top of their day job. So I do see a rub coming at some point where, news organizations essentially need to say, is this worth our time and our effort and our money? And if so, great. Then editors are going to need to learn that the reporters are going to be MIA for an hour a day as they do web stuff. Or if it's not, then I think you're going to see papers say, look, this is not worth our time and money to take these reporters that otherwise could be out breaking stories or covering stuff or making phone calls, doing web video that only 50 people are watching. So the workload issue is, I think, a real one that people will have to address because reporters are already, I think, overworked and underpaid in a lot of cases. And so not only will they become more stressed, but their editors, I think, could become annoyed that these reporters are busy doing web video all day and not reporting.
As you said, you work for Politico, a newspaper, and Politico, the website, and you also do the television stuff. What do you personally get the most reaction out of?
If you do television, if you do MSNBC, CNN, C-SPAN, things like that, I mean, the old media still has a huge effect. I think in this town, if you were to do Morning Joe on MSNBC, which is a pretty highly watched show for a Washington audience, you get a good reaction. I mean, you get a good reaction from that in terms of people emailing you or things like that. Certainly more than probably if I were to do a web video and post it on Politico or something. But, I also think a lot of times, I think just having a good story, be it web video, be it a website article, be it a print article, you still get the most reaction to a story that's actually good.
We're going to show a clip of you and Dylan Byers.
Yeah.
And it's called On Media. What is this? Where does this fit in on everything?
It's a sort of a new program where Dylan Byers is a great media reporter with a very popular blog for us. And so essentially trying to mooch off his traffic, we're doing a weekly web discussion about media issues that I think a lot of regular readers of his blog would be interested in.
Here's a little bit, just a minute and a half of what it looks like.
Hi, I'm Dylan Byers.
And I'm Patrick Gavin.
And this is On Media.
What is the story with Rush and the future of radio for him?
Yeah, so this is his contract is up at the end of this year, right? And ever since the episode with Sandra Fluke, the Georgetown law student, right, whom he referred to as a slut and a prostitute, et cetera, advertisers have been pulling back, right? Either because they were spurred on by a boycott effort against Rush Limbaugh, or just because they were uncomfortable with being associated with his brand. Now, the question that nobody really knows the answer to is just how much damage Limbaugh actually did to
Because there's been some pushback. Some people are saying, in fact, no, the loss has been grossly exaggerated.
Right. And so what happens is Cumulus, which carries Limbaugh's show on 40 stations in some really important markets like New York, Chicago, Washington, the CEO of Cumulus comes out on these earnings calls and he says, because of this issue, I'm not going to name it by name, but we all know what I'm talking about, we took some significant losses. And from where Limbaugh's sitting, he's saying, listen, stop, I'm getting tired of you blaming this on me and criticizing me, and if you keep doing it, I'm going to leave.
How much does the public care about the media stuff?
I mean, it's surprising that I think a lot of, I don't know if the public cares about the media, but media reporting is popular. And it's largely popular, I think, by other journalists, of which there are a lot. So I think the media reads itself obsessively enough that you could justify just having a media reporter. That said, I mean, I don't think that the average American cares about me getting promoted to deputy assistant editor, you know, whatever. But I do think the public cares about when the press gets things right and when they don't. I think they care about what stories are being covered and what stories are not being covered. I think they care about making sure that reporting is fair and balanced. So those stories, I think, are of interest. And so that's what you see a lot of media reporters doing, is not only covering like who's up, who's down, what did the Post have on this front page today, but also more macro issues of sort of media coverage and where it exceeds and where it does not do so well.
What's the top 5 list that you all do? And we have a clip here coming up of Alexander Trowbridge.
Yeah, so Alexander Trowbridge is a young reporter for us who's very multimedia savvy. And so he does a weekly top 5 video on anything. It could be sort of top 5 celebrities to see at the Democratic convention. It could be top 5 people to look for in 2016. It's sort of whatever thought bubble he has that week. And it's a great example of sort of how a young reporter can use multimedia to get greater exposure for himself, whereas 20 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago, he or she would not have been able to. But also a great example of how somebody who's young, who's tech savvy, can use multimedia to generate really good-looking video that is a step above, you know, say a Google Hangout.
By the way, is he in any relationship to the Trowbridge that used to be cabinet secretary years ago?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, here it is.
All so they can manage their risks and move forward. It's simply a matter of following the signs. They all lead here. CME Group, how the world advances.
Polls show the country is ready for a female president, and if Hillary Clinton decides to run, polls show she'd have a lock on the Democratic nomination.
I do want to see that glass ceiling shattered. I don't think it has to be any particular person.
But what if she doesn't run? Well, when it comes to female presidential contenders, the Democrats' bench may be deeper than you think. Here's our list of the top 5 Democratic women to watch in 2016 who aren't Hillary Clinton. Number 5, Kathleen Sebelius. The Secretary of Health and Human Services is the former 2-term governor of the very red state of Kansas and the daughter of the former governor of swing state Ohio. She was even vetted to be Barack Obama's running mate in 2008. Last November, the Des Moines Register rounded up the Democrats' wish list for 2016, and Sebelius was number 4 on that list. Clinton, of course, was number 1. For Politico, I'm Alexander Trowbridge, and that's our list of the top 5 Democratic women to watch in 2016 who aren't Hillary Clinton.
A couple things, we cut it short because it was longer than that, but it let in, we could not get rid of that ad, which is an interesting thing that you find both places where you can get rid of it and you can't. Tell us the philosophy.
Well, that's called, I think it's called pre-roll in the business, and it's essentially an ad that you sell to advertisers saying, on original content, we'll run this before the ad. And it is part of the challenge of web video, which is that users hate them. I hate them. I can't stand them. I don't know that reporters love them either, because they probably know that I have no data on it, but I assume a number of people just will walk away from it. But when it comes to web video, how else are you going to make money on it? That's essentially your version of advertising. So I don't know what the future of pre-roll is. Maybe they do phenomenally well. Maybe there's not a big drop-off on them. But almost every web video, I mean, from YouTube on down, has that stuff. And they're annoying, but I think it's just one more people looking for revenue dollars.
What's interesting is that YouTube brags on its statistics blog that 65% of their ads are skippable.
Right, which is true. Like I think what they have is, let's say they have a 60-second ad. After 5 seconds, you can click skip ad. So I think that's what it means, is that it's skippable after 5 seconds. I don't think you can literally from the second get rid of it. But it's a great thing for them, because most people, when I see there's an ad, I just go to another browser tab and I do something. And so I'm hearing the whole 60 seconds in my head, not knowing that I could skip it. But no, that is sort of a nice feature that they've been able to pull off.
The New York Times on their website doing a lot of video, and they call something an op-doc, which I assume is the opposite. You know, it's like the op-ed page.
Right.
We've had these folks on this show, the Gregory brothers, and here's one that we found on the New York Times site.
Now we're gonna talk about drugs.
We need to repeal the whole war on drugs. It isn't working. We don't have to have more courts and more prisons. This has to change. This has to change. Prohibition didn't work. Prohibition on drugs doesn't work. We have spent over $400 billion. It's a waste of money.
Of 50,000 arrests, 82% are black and Hispanic. These arrests stigmatize, they criminalize, making it harder to find a job, making it harder to get into school, making it harder to turn their lives around. It must end, and it must end now.
The war on drugs, while well-intentioned, has been a failure. We're warehousing addicted people every day in state prisons, giving them no treatment, sending them back on the street, and wondering why they don't get better, why they commit crimes again. Well, they commit crimes to support their addiction. The war on drugs is a failure. Let's put down the guns and unclench the fist. The war on drugs is a failure.
We don't treat alcoholics like this.
What do you think? They take our video, they take others' video. There's a lot of interchange from different networks. It's not like it used to be. The commercial networks would sue you if you ever took any of their video. What do you think of this development?
Well, I mean, I think technically they can get away with it under the satire use.
And fair use.
And fair use, yeah. That certainly, that line has been exploited and probably pushed back a lot over the past couple of years. I mean, I think the Gregory brothers are a great example of, first of all, people who have a ton of free time on their hand. I mean, the amount of work these videos take to put together is amazing. Two, what they've been able to do is sort of find a sweet spot of original content, original approach that's going to get lots of views and then accordingly make them money. But the reality is the nature of the web is constantly evolving. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that the Gregory brothers shtick, be it as it were, like they're going to need a constant. I mean, they can't keep on doing that exact thing forever because people are kind of used to it and always looking for the next best thing. But for a moment in time, they certainly have been able to capture, I mean, millions of viewers on a lot of their hits. But the reality is the amount of times that people are to find that sweet spot is pretty small. It's helpful to do it in politics, in news media, because that's almost free press, which is that if you do something on Chris Christie, or if you do something on C-SPAN, generally C-SPAN's gonna cover it just to either poke fun at themselves or draw attention to themselves, or Chris Christie will mention it at a press conference. So it's sort of free publicity for a project when you're dealing with people like the Fourth Estate who kind of have a huge barrel of ink.
When you were at Trinity College in Connecticut, what did you think you'd be doing in your life?
Oh, that's a good question. I always wrote. I did a lot of fiction in college and a bit of nonfiction. So I think I always thought I'd be writing, and then as soon as as I was about to leave college, you quickly realize that there are no jobs really for writing, or accessible ones for college graduates. So I became a teacher, and I had a bit of experience working with kids while I was in college. And I was able to sort of turn the teaching job into writing clips, which then kind of got me some entree into Washington, D.C.
How long did you teach?
I taught 7th and 8th grade history and English in New Jersey for 3 years, which was 1 year too many. The third year was a little exhausting. But the nice thing about it, so, and this is what I always tell young reporters or people trying to become a reporter is you essentially need credibility. And the nice, no one's going to publish an op-ed by you saying, I'm Brian Lamb, citizen, 22-year-old citizen. But the nice thing about being a history teacher is I could say I'm Patrick Gavin, history teacher. So all of a sudden the Trenton Times and the Princeton Packet cared about my thoughts about current events. And so I was able to, because I had that quote unquote credibility. And so then I was able to build up a bit of a portfolio that I could then bring down to a much more prestigious place like DC and say, here are some clips I have. So in that regard, it worked out nicely for my writing portfolio.
Why did you come to the Brookings Institution? What drew you there?
I knew I wanted to get into political journalism, and everybody said there were sort of two approaches. One is go out to Chattanooga and work for a local small paper with a great editor, get your clips, get your experience, and then bring that to DC and say, here I am. Or the other argument was just come to DC and make it happen. I was more compelled to just come to DC and make it happen. Even though Brookings wasn't a political journalism job, I did writing there. I did actual journalism there in terms of I would go to Brookings events and cover them like a reporter would cover them. But even at Brookings, it took many years of freelancing and hustling to try to get my first real journalism job at the Examiner. So yeah, I mean, it's incredibly hard, I think, to break into journalism. It's very doable, and I actually think it gets more doable every single day as long as you're good at it. But yeah, it took a long time.
You're sending, though, messages out of people listening. Brookings is known to be liberal.
Yep.
The Examiner is known to be conservative.
Right.
Politico, I don't know what the profile is on it. If you listen to right-wing talk show hosts, they'll say it's liberal.
You get it from both sides.
Yeah. So where are you?
I mean, to be honest, and I know every reporter has to say this, I'm fairly non-partisan in the sense that my time in DC, I mean, I would say there may be a couple of issues, which I won't alert the American public to, that I feel are black and white, that no, this is the way it should be. Like bull riding. I don't get bull riding, and I don't get what the argument is for bull riding. So there's my one example of being biased. But there are a couple of issues in which I think are black and white that I don't understand what the argument against or for is. Being in DC, though, and Brookings was a great education on this, you realize that even if you might disagree with one side, you don't think that they're mean-spirited or fundamentally dishonest or even wrong. It's just people operating with two different viewpoints. And so maybe it's a bad thing, but my time in DC has made me less certain about anything than I was before, because all of a sudden, you go to a Brookings panel and you hear both sides of this and you're like, wow, that guy really has a great point, or that woman has a really great point. So I would say, there are a couple issues that in my personal life that I do think are black and white, but my time in DC has largely made me realize that both sides, for the most part, have very valid points. They just come at it from very different philosophies.
People outside of here don't know that Politico is a part of Channel 7, Channel 8, which are local, owned by a local, the Albritton family, and that you do the hard copy and the website and television, and here you are interviewing a familiar face on Politico television.
All right, I'm Patrick Gavin, Politico. I'm joined by Donald Rumsfeld, the author of the new book, Rumsfeld's Rules, former everything. Your resume has pretty much every job.
Well,
maybe not the presidency.
Lived a long time.
Yeah.
When I first came to Washington in 1957 out of the Navy, this was a farm.
That's right.
In off Key Bridge.
And,
it was rural area.
There's still some farm animals here, but we call them reporters nowadays. So you have in here 380, right, rules?
One
lessons.
Of which is, if you have rules, never have more than 10.
You took my punchline. And I appreciate you violating one of your rules, which is from your buddy Dick Cheney, which is you never get in trouble for things you don't say, but you're still honoring us by talking to the press anyway.
Well, thank you.
All right.
The other rule, of course, is never say never.
That is true.
Because all generalizations are wrong, even this one.
And when he was Secretary of Defense, he would have no more come to that studio than...
right. But he's got a book to sell now.
Were you surprised that he would come?
No, I will say, to Mr. Rumsfeld's credit, he is one of these politicians or politicos that isn't press averse. When he was at the Pentagon, he would do a lot of press conferences and he would take on tough questions. He may not have answered them the way the reporters would have liked. On his last book tour, he went on The Daily Show, which is no easy interview for a gentleman like Mr. Rumsfeld. He went on Opie and Anthony, which is a pretty lewd radio show. The View. So he's not averse to going on outlets that he probably knows won't agree with him. How many cameras are there where you were, and how many people are working on that? I think that one was we had graduated to a 3-camera shot, which is big for us. Those things are a great example of web video and what it can do, in the sense that it does take a little bit more manpower. So behind there we had probably two cameramen. You maybe had a photographer taking pictures that we would then use for the website, and then myself, so pretty small operation. What's nice about that, and this is kind of getting back to what you were saying earlier about, well, why not do this? So we can take that web video, put it on the web, get the clicks on that, which is great. Then the text of what we talked about can become an accompanying web article, so we get the clicks for that. The text of that, we also have a newspaper to fill. We'll probably put some of that in the newspaper, so then that fulfills our paper obligation and gets it in front of more people. So you're able to pot a lot of plants with those. It's nice exposure for myself. It's nice exposure for Mr. Rumsfeld. It sort of brands our Roslyn headquarters as a destination for people to come, and the way they know they have to do places like C-SPAN as well. So, I mean, who knows if this is ever going to make a ton of money or not, but it's nice to, I mean, you're able to pot a lot of plants with that strategy.
We're going to depart from the establishment media using television to a group that a lot of people watching will know about, a lot of people will not. This is from Infowars.com.
It's Tuesday, May 7th, 2013. I'm Alex Jones. Get ready for another original edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Straight ahead.
Tonight, danger. Google tells internet users that the Drudge Report and Infowars.com websites contain malicious software. I don't think so. Plus, more information has emerged about Google's relationship with the government and spook agencies, as a group calls for hearings into Google's ties to the CIA and NSA. And Professor Griff says Obama is a mass media deception. The InfoWars exclusive interview premieres tonight on the InfoWars Nightly News.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and I want to thank again all the subscribers and viewers that make InfoWars Nightly News possible via prisonplanet.tv as we fight the globalist plan to construct a prison planet on the ashes of our once free republic and world. Again, thank you for joining us.
Intense.
Do you watch Alex Jones? Do you listen to him?
I don't. There's no insult to him. It's not on my daily diet of things to check out. But he is a great success story and a great example of how you're able to use cheap, accessible technology to get yourself and get your message out there.
It looks pretty close to
great.
NBC Nightly News.
Absolutely. I mean, it is. When we were watching that clip from my colleague Alexander Trowbridge a couple minutes ago, one of my first thoughts was, when I started Politico 4 years ago, I was using these flip cams, which at the time were, cutting edge. And not a lot of people use them anymore. But when you go back and look at those clips, I mean, they're grainy, they're not so nice. And so now for the exact same amount of money, you can really get actually an HD picture. So anyway, people like Mr. Jones can benefit from that in terms of being able to turn what could be his basement or a farmhouse or an actual office studio into really professional grade television.
What's PJ TV?
That is Pajamas Media, I believe, which is run by conservative blogger Glenn Reynolds.
This is somebody named Alfonso Rachel. Let's watch it.
They're the ones who are always keeping people angry about the past, falsely accusing Republicans of what the Democrats have done.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
Liberals acquit Democrats for their guilty past and punish Republicans for a past they're not guilty of. All part of the Democrat characteristics of Democrats covering up their evil, from fighting to keep slavery legal to Benghazi. I'm Alfonso Rachel with Zone Nation, where I reckon if a next door neighbor can hide 3 women in his house for years, I reckon Syria can hide WMDs. And just like Charles Ramsey was able to stumble over and uncover the truth about his nasty neighbor, the truth will be uncovered with the failure of the Obama administration in Benghazi.
You got some big testicles to pull this off, bro.
Your reaction, Mr. Gavin?
I think one thing that web video has not produced a lot of are humorists. Now, I don't know that necessarily he's going for humor, but he's certainly going for being a colorful, dynamic personality. And a lot of people have tried that. We've tried that at Politico. And I think the comedy world has seen this as well, where people think now with YouTube, you can just post a video of yourself and all of a sudden you think you're a comedian. There haven't been a ton of people who've been able to, especially I think in politics, essentially produce daily show type political humor or parody or sarcasm. Occasionally you see it, but again, it comes down to the whole idea of, when you give everybody a camera, not everybody's camera quality. I think that gentleman's obviously very good in front of a camera, but in terms of producing the next generation of Jon Stewart's or the Five on Fox News, sometimes the barrier to entry can be a good thing in terms of separating the talented folks from the not talented.
What do you say to the old timers who say this is really bad for this country? All this stuff, this video and non-journalists getting into it.
I think there's a case for that. Sure, there are a lot of people being given a public forum who, in journalism or not in journalism, who maybe don't deserve it. At the same time, I'm sure there are a lot of people in old media who rose to a certain rank who may not have deserved it either, or may not. I know just in my small experience, having worked at various news organizations, you do see people, older journalists who you know would not cut it today. That doesn't mean that they aren't good at what they do, but it's just the demands of their generation, the demands of our generation are very different. I think that older people who decry what this media saturation is doing to us in terms of the need to constantly be updated in the constant news stream, I think it's a valid complaint, and I think that the argument of take your time, get your facts right, that's always going to be true. We saw it on the healthcare ruling, we saw it in the Boston Marathon bombing, and I think that the pendulum swings back and forth, and I think now we're at a time where people are reconsidering how important it is to get your facts right, double source things.
The first fellow we saw, Alex Jones, operates out of Texas, and I think Glenn Reynolds operates out of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And the next person moved from the East Coast, where he was successful on Fox News, to create his own web internet.
Yeah.
Glenn Beck.
Right.
Called The Blaze. Let's watch a bit of Glenn Beck.
The media is so far gone, it cannot be revived. The Washington Post, out of all of the updates yesterday, actually said this. They said, who's tweeting about Benghazi? Rich, middle-aged men and Chick-fil-A lovers. What are they saying? They're saying white Tea Party members. See what they've just done? The president used the film and the filmmaker and American rights in Benghazi, trying to say that American rights, or Americans using their First Amendment right in such a way, killed the ambassador. That an ambassador and 3 others were actually killed because of American freedoms. That wasn't true at all, but that's what they did. Now the Washington Post is responding, and if I may translate what they said, nobody cares except white Christians. America, please wake up. That's the most racist, bigoted statement I have ever heard.
What sense do you have about his success?
Love him or hate him, he's a huge success story. He was a huge success at Fox News, and since he's left Fox News, he might not be on the tip of everybody's tongue anymore, given that he's not on Fox News, but professionally he's doing quite well. He has a lot of subscribers, he sells a lot of ads, he's still a multimillionaire. He's a great example of one interesting dynamic of quote-unquote new media, which is that I think reporters and journalists are less beholden to the news organizations than they previously were, which is that, you used to, what mattered used to be calling up and saying, I'm Patrick Gavin with the New York Times. And if you didn't have that second part, the New York Times part, nobody wanted to listen to you. But now it's really just saying, I'm Patrick Gavin, if Patrick Gavin means something. If you look at Politico, Mike Allen, who writes our morning playbook, and he's just a great reporter, he could leave Politico tomorrow and go somewhere else, and it wouldn't really change his value. He could start his own venture probably, and have a lot of people come with him. And we see this happening all the time. That if you're good at what you do, be it what Mike Allen does, be it what you do, be it what Glenn Beck does, you can take that away from more traditional news organizations and become your own independent person. And viewers will come with you because they can, because the internet allows them to.
What are Patrick Gavin's 2012 viral political videos?
So that was a list that we did at the end of 2012, which took a look at, especially given the campaign year, the top 10 videos that essentially became viral sensations, meaning it could be either just an offhanded comment, it could be something that somebody turned into something funny, it could be a clip from a celebrity, but something that caught the attention of the World Wide Web and went on to millions and millions of views.
Here's 50 seconds of it.
Okay.
Your stare was holding grip. Gene skin was showing. Hot night wind was blowing. Where you think you're going, baby? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. But here's my number, so call me maybe.
Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. But here's my number, so call me maybe.
Do you remember who did that video?
I don't remember who did that one. I think there was a clip in there, I think, of Congresswoman Linda Sanchez having her staffers do it in her office, which sort of made me realize, I mean, what's interesting about viral video is that it's provided another outlet, I think, for politicians to not only get their message out there, but to show their humanity and show their sense of humor. And they're doing it quite frequently. I mean, they're all of a sudden realizing that they don't have to do the sit down with the New York Times or the Washington Post, that they can do a sit down on The View, they can do a funny video with a blogger on YouTube, and that's their way. That's another way of getting their message out, maybe sometimes in a way that they would much rather. I mean, they know at the New York Times are probably gonna get grilled about something, but if they do a Call Me Maybe video, they might get more viewers than the New York Times interview, and it certainly makes them look a lot better.
Well, speaking of government video, the White House has quite an extensive look at the president. Here's a clip of the president. I think he was in Austin, Texas here. He obviously has a camera crew following him, and then they edit it, put it on the web. Let's watch it.
There's incredible stuff going on all across America and right here in Austin that I think can be good models for the rest of America to follow. I visited Manor New Tech High School, where students are earning high-tech skills that companies are looking for right now. They are getting excited.
Welcome, Mr. President.
Congratulations on the great work you're doing, and we're going to highlight it.
Thank you,
We want the whole country to see what's going on here.
We're excited you're here. We want to show the whole country.
What do you got to show me? Come on. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Oh. So this is all exclusively solar powered? Yes. That's got some speed there. You guys got some contraptions. That's what these are. That's the technical name for it. There's the light bulb right there. I just saw the light go on. And how about this one? Oh! You want me to put goggles on?
Yes.
Right up in the corner was wh.gov, which anybody can get to free of charge. Do you know who pays for all that?
I believe that's just from the White House's press office. They do this video called West Wing Week. They're pretty popular. They're very, very well done. They're very polished, but they're a huge source of controversy in the sense that the president has been able to sort of circumvent traditional. I mean, almost all the shots you just saw there. I mean, some of them were probably press was probably invited as well, but a lot of them press is not, and that's a huge source of contention, which is that the Obama administration, and I'm sure any administration going forward, is realizing that they can have their own videographer, their own photographer, and essentially put together their own. I mean, it's propaganda, but it's their own news package.
And they also go live with their his speeches.
Right, and a lot of times it's in ways it's access that the Fourth Estate is not given access to. Their photographer gets a lot of access. The White House photographers were like, it's hard to blame them from their perspective. Their job is not to help the press, but from the press's perspective, they're annoyed that technology is sort of allowed. I mean, what you just saw is essentially what 60 Minutes tries to do. This package of insider access and all these things, and now the White House knows they can be their own 60 Minutes.
What's your guess is what's going to happen over time?
I think it's going to continue. I mean, I think journalists really hate when they don't get access to the press, and they hate it when they don't get their questions answered. And I get that, but I also get the White House's perspective, which is their job is not to help. The press. Jay Carney's job is not to help reporters. His job is to help his boss, the administration, and that's a long-going tension, and it's never going to go away.
But press secretaries always say, my job is to help the president and help the press.
Sure, but at the end of the day, he's being paid by the White House. He's not being paid by...
He's being paid by the taxpayers.
True. At the end of the day, I think he knows that the person who hired him and the person who will fire him is the president. And so, sure, he's beholden to a lot of people, but his job is to do the president's bidding, and they all do it very well, but it's a huge source of consternation for journalists.
All right, here's 1 minute of Patrick Gavin from 2006.
Oh, this can't be good.
You have to explain this.
I have to say, and I feel bad saying this in front of C-SPAN because they're filming it, and I think C-SPAN is, the fact that they're here and filming it is great. It's obviously really good promotion for Red City and cause and for the event. Personally, I find it a bit insulting. Sorry. I don't know. I thought at the very least we might get PBS. I don't know. NPR maybe. I mean, as you can tell, none of us are that, camera friendly, so audio is great. I don't know. I mean, it's a bit offensive that the best we can do is a network that finds highlighting newspapers, must-see TV. So, sorry. Before I start, C-SPAN and Steve Scully told me to tell C-SPAN viewers, please don't call more than once every 30 days. So, thank you for that.
Bratty child.
So insulting.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. 7 years ago, were you married then?
I was not married then. And I didn't know how to dress clearly. I think I had an extra 10 pounds on there, and I was a little bratty young reporter.
What was that? I mean, we've covered a lot of these celebrity.
That's the DC's funniest celebrity comedy competition, which of course is a huge oxymoron. I obviously didn't win, as you could tell. But yeah, they invite largely reporters or occasionally they get politicians to do stand-up for a night, and it's for a charity. And I'm trying to think who won that. I think Grover Norquist might have won that year. I've done it twice, and I've never won.
Huffington Post. How much of a competition are you in at Politico with Huffington Post?
I mean, the short answer is Politico's in competition with everybody and everybody's time, so I wouldn't eliminate anybody. And they do have political coverage, so we certainly compete with them on that. I mean, the primary difference is that the Huffington Post covers everything. They cover health, they cover divorced people, they cover environmental issues, comedy, entertainment, politics, sports, everything. So they've got a lot of coals on the fire. Politico covers one thing, and they do that on purpose, and they try to do the best at that one thing. So certainly our politics coverage competes with anybody's politics coverage, including the Huffington Post. Their job as a news organization is much broader than ours, which has its advantages for them. So they're going to get people interested in reading about divorces on their divorce page. We're not. On the other hand, we're able to dedicate more resources to our one niche. So there are benefits to both. Luckily, fortunately, both news organizations are doing well.
Named after Arianna Huffington, but sold to AOL. And here is, they're now doing 12 hours a day of live video from 10 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, East Coast time. Here, let's watch a little bit of their coverage.
You're watching HuffPost Live. I'm Abby Huntsman. The Internal Revenue Service has publicly apologized for targeting Tea Party groups with increased scrutiny looking into their tax-exempt status during the 2012 election. Members of Congress have called for an investigation, and President Obama vowed to hold the IRS accountable if the report is in fact true. Obviously, members of the Tea Party are outraged, especially since members first raised suspicions of this activity over a year ago. But could this newfound attention be just what the Tea Party needs to re-energize their base ahead of the 2014 elections? Joining us to discuss, we have a great group. Brian Morgenstern, a Republican strategist. Of course, Sam Stein, HuffPost senior politics reporter. Hogan Gidley, senior strategist at Bray Bender Cox. Bob Schultz, founder and chairman of We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education. And Scotty Hughes, news director of the Tea Party News Network and member of the teaparty.net. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
No problem, Abby. And as you know how this works, please jump in if you have anything to add. But Sam, let's start with you.
This program's almost 25 years old, and it's always one person for an hour. And this is how far it's swung over the last 25 years, where you have 5 guests there on a Huffington Post website.
Encouraged to interrupt.
On a Hangout, though, using the Google Hangout.
Yeah. I mean, for where web video is, they do a pretty good job at it. That is that's certainly one approach, which is kind of hyperactive, lots of guests, tweet us your comments, we're going to read tweets on air, interrupt, interject. It's very lively, it's very dynamic. I do think though, I think the media world has to offer a lot of different plates for people. So you have that, then you have your show, you have ESPN, which is also pretty hyperactive, but then you have Charlie Rose. I think people gravitate towards what they like. That's obviously, I think, geared towards a younger, more news junkie individual. And then I think, I think Huffington Post and other organizations also offer more in-depth stuff as well. So it's kind of, I think what everybody's trying to do is just offer everybody what they want and hope that somehow that yields profits.
In the end, what do you think is going to last?
You have to assume that everything will be internet at one point, even if it just means your old school broadcasting on the internet. Obviously, I think mobile devices, portable devices. We're hearing now in D.C., I think Senator McCain trying to get rid of cable bundling and all these kind of, old forms of doing business. And I think that the future will certainly be portable. But, you could see, you do sort of see these things happening where, there'll be an explosion in blogs and all these things, then all of a sudden people will return to long-form journalism, or there'll be HuffPost Live, but then people will return to shows like yours. So I think some things will stick, but I think as people get older, they're probably going to want a little more long-form stuff.
I have some statistics here from YouTube, which is now owned by Google. I think they bought it for almost $2 billion. More than 1 billion unique users visit YouTube each month. Over 4 billion hours of video are watched each month on YouTube. 72 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute.
It's amazing.
How much do you use YouTube?
A decent amount. Not a ton. What's interesting is, even YouTube, I think, is trying to figure out new profit models. They're now exploring subscription channels so that people can subscribe to the Brian Lamb channel for a fee. And so YouTube will get some of that, and you'll get some of that. So they're exploring new profit things as well. That's a lot of bandwidth. That's a lot of hard drive space that they're hosting all those videos on. YouTube is clearly, I think, the biggest success story in terms of video hosting. But I think they're going to continue to try to find ways to be able to justify the amount of free stuff that they're hosting on their servers.
What's Patrick Gavin want to do in this future of journalism?
Oh, I don't know. I like my job. I think I will say this for myself and probably on behalf of a lot of reporters, young or old, which is that, and I could be wrong, but it does seem as if journalism is more exhausting than ever before. You see even with young reporters, especially during campaign season, griping about their Twitter feed just being almost unreadable because the sheer volume of things, or the amount of emails they're getting, be it from their bosses, be it from campaign offices, press releases, their Facebook page, the demands on their journalism to constantly update stuff. So, if I had in terms of how the pendulum's going to swing for reporters, I think that you do see a lot of reporters burn out quickly. I have not burnt out yet, but you see this at every news organization in town, which is that the sheer amount that's not even so much demanded of you on a workload, but the amount of information you have to consume, and you've got to be up to speed on television shows and Twitter and everything. It's exhausting, and so that's I think that's a choice for reporters to make as they enter into their 30s. As I am, and with family, is how can I dial down the noise a little bit and try to actually just do my job as best I can.
Where's home originally?
New York City.
Manhattan?
Yeah. Born and then moved to Worcester and then Chicago, and so all over the place.
How many people work at Politico?
Oh, I believe there's north of 200 at this point.
And if people want to get online, what's the address?
Politico.com.
Patrick Gavin, reporter, Politico. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
For a DVD copy of this program, call 1-877-662-7726. For free transcripts or to give us your comments about this program, visit us at Q&A.org. Q&A programs are also available as C-SPAN podcasts.